Hello and welcome to a live Kerfefe break on Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. I'm your host, Keri. We are hanging out on this Friday, March 24th. I hope you're having a great March. I am I'm well rested. We've been working nonstop on our house, and the past 2 days or 3 days, it was nonstop painting for me. My job was to paint the bedroom, the master bedroom, and the ceiling, and then do all the caulking, and that was one of the final steps before we got to set up our new bed, which was a gift from Poetry Painter. Thank you, Poetry Painter, if you're here. I've never had such a fancy bed. I can't believe we slept in a full size bed for so long now that we have this really luxurious one. But anyway, so last night was great because it was like, oh my goodness, look at all this space. Tiger loves it. We still have some little things we have to do in that room, like a few patches we have to do on the floor and the baseboards, and you have to do some quarter rounds. And anyway, if you're into renovation, you know what I'm talking about. I'm having to learn what all these things are. So, but we have to paint the door, things like that. But we're almost done. It's been about 2 months on that one room, so I'm very excited. Okay. Caulking, someone says. Yeah, the caulking, man, it takes a while. So I wanted to play, I wonder if you guys can hear this song. Let's see. I've never shared a look at that. It looks like I can share a Spotify. Let's see if you guys can see that. So my husband came in when I was working on the room. I was up on a ladder doing the painting and the caulking, and he was laughing and he was like, "It's so funny because I never know if I'm gonna find you listening to a 1920s playlist like do 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 or listening to like angry rap." And when I was working, I tend to listen to a little bit more angry rap, or if you're working out. And I may have mentioned this in a previous episode. I think I did mention it with Mystery Chris, but I recently discovered a bunch of really great Christian rap that I'd never heard of before. And you guys may be familiar with some of these artists. I wasn't, but I love some of these songs. I'm going to play you. Here we go. I'm just going to play you a little snip of one. It's called Not Today, Satan. Can you hear that? I don't know if you can hear it. We'll just hear the beginning, then we'll stop before I get in trouble. Oh no, it's not working. No sound. No. Yeah, Tom McDonald's on my playlist too. You can't hear it? Ah, okay. I'm gonna stop sharing then. Sorry. You know what? Let's see if we can find that one on YouTube because the beginning is so worth it. And I hope it brightens your day. I'm gonna put this playlist out if anyone wants to hear some hard Christian rap. Uh you can listen to okay, here it is. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Thanks for bearing with me. Today's just a fun day. I do have two big topics I want to get to. One is ideological possession. But before that, just a little bit of fun. Okay. Now tell me if you can hear this. Hold on. It's excellent. What are you talking about, Real Raven? Real Raven says, yeah, it sounds extremely bad. Okay. Look, if rap is not your genre, I'm not saying you're suddenly gonna love rap. But as far as the genre goes, I think it's really well done. Somebody says this is sick. Oh, this is sick. Yes, Dom, it is. You gotta go listen to the whole song. It makes me happy and it's badass. It's like anyway. Dang, Gary's hardcore. That's why my husband was laughing. He was like, I never know if I come in, you're going to be like, do, 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 or if it's like, not today, Satan. No, it's not the genre. Okay. Well, I'm going to put out the whole, I'm going to call it the Hard Believer playlist, and you can listen to it and see if there's any on the playlist that you do enjoy. I never heard of Struggle Jennings, Jules. I'll have to look that up. But okay. So, oh, Real Raven says I'm a music producer. There was no high frequency. Well, I don't know what that means, but I'll trust you. I still like the song. Sorry. Okay, so one quick announcement. April 15th in Austin, I'm hosting Minds Fest at Vulcan Theater, and that's going to be with a bunch of speakers like Peter Boghossian, Daryl Davis, Jack Posobiec, I'm blanking for a second, Luke Radowski, Ian Crossland, Destiny. There's also going to be music and comedy. It's co-sponsored by Base Records, and you guys can get info at minds.com if you're in Texas or if you want to travel here for it. It should be very exciting. We're going to get started today. There's two things I want to talk about. When doing these videos by myself, I figured it's probably time best spent just sort of pulling apart some of wokeness and trying to explain woke to people who maybe are still in it if they get sent this video, and maybe also to people who are on the outside of it but have friends and family who are in it. So one of the things I wanted to show you was, I guess this week, Michael Knowles, who's a conservative commentator, appeared at Purdue University, and Timcast News was there. I think this was last night. Timcast News was there to get video footage of the protesters. So here, I'm going to put this up on the screen so you guys can see it. Timcast News at Purdue University, far left protesters chant, "Fuck off, Nazis," while lining the hallway outside of the ballroom where Michael Knowles will be speaking. We're going to watch a little bit of this. Now, you're going to be hearing language, so warning, there's going to be language because they're chanting this F word and stuff. But I think it's important to look at this because this is not unusual. There have been a ton of videos like this that have come out. I would say I started seeing them probably in 2016 at college campuses where college students are behaving as the ideologically possessed. They're behaving like mad people, like crazy people. And I think it's a form of group, like collective mental illness that you're witnessing. And if you're a parent and you have children who are nearing college age, I would, definitely pay attention to what kind of stuff is happening at the colleges your child is considering. So again, this was at Purdue University. And Michael Knowles, by the way, I don't know very much about him, but I do know that he's just a vanilla, middle of the road conservative. There's nothing about him that's a fascist or Nazi or super right wing or whatever it is they think he is. This is just a middle of the road dude. So here we go. Let's look at a couple things. We've already seen a guy walk by with a trans flag on a sign. It had an AR-15 on it. There's somebody here that has a sign that says exterminate transphobia. So they think they're being clever by borrowing language from the Nazis, like exterminate, and then putting transphobia in there. What's evil about that is they are falsely alleging that any conservative at that campus at Purdue who came to hear Michael Knowles speak, some middle of the road conservative, that they must be a transphobe and they must be a Nazi or something, and therefore they must be exterminated. Like it's not hard to make that leap. These are the Nazis that we're watching. The people who are here protesting like this, they don't realize it. They're possessed by ideology, but they are the ones who are acting like NAZI. Okay, let's continue. That girl has a sign, "No fascists." I bet you, let's say I would be willing to bet all the money in my bank account, which is not very much. I would be willing to bet that most of these college kids who have signs that have the word fascist on it, if you were to stop them on the spot and say, what is fascism? Can you define it? They can't. I guarantee you they cannot define, they can't really put into words why they are out here in this hallway protesting or what it is they think they're protesting. Oh, wait, let's rewind it. I want to see that one. It looks like it says something about conservatives. Oh, look at this. This sign. Look at this angry-faced little Handmaid's Tale there. She's got a sign that says, "For the good of society, conservatism must be eradicated." I would challenge this person, if I were there, to explain what she means and why she thinks conservatism must be eradicated. But I already know she probably would not answer the question because the ideologically possessed, the woke are just one kind of ideologically possessed people, but they are ideologically possessed, and those people cannot have conversations. They can't articulate in their own words what they think, what they mean. They can't form arguments to support the things that they say because the things they say are not their opinions. These are not their opinions. They speak received opinions. They copy paste. They speak in mantras, and they have certain slogans that they all repeat. But if you ask her to get off the script and explain, like, "Hey, my name's Keri. What's your name? What do you mean conservatism must be eradicated? What is conservatism?" Like, I guarantee you this girl, first of all, she's not capable of having that conversation, even though she's at Purdue University. And secondly, she would be unwilling to try to have that conversation. They have a variety of ways in which the woke have a variety of ways in which they refuse to engage with you, because to engage with you shows that they're incapable of defending their ideas. They're even incapable most of the time of defining what they mean, of defining the terms they use. So she would say things like, "I'm not going to engage with fascists." Okay, that's ad hominem. She would say things like, "Stay in your lane." They have a whole system of slogans and words, a whole lexicon, a whole dictionary of slogans and words that they use specifically to avoid having to talk to people and to explain the things that are on their signs and their shirts. I've gone up to people at protests like this before and asked them. One of the signs I hate the most that they carry is the one that says "silence is violence," which is stupid, and they don't even believe it. If they believed that, they wouldn't tell you to shut up because that means silence is violence, right? So they wouldn't tell you to be violent. They don't even believe that sign, but they carry it and they can't define it. And I've asked people at protests before, "What's that sign mean to you?" They don't know. They don't know the first place where to start. So I hate to make fun of this girl. I'm just laughing at the situation. I was in this cult. I know what it's like. It's a little bit of dark humor, but yeah, these people are at a university like Purdue and probably cannot explain the quotes on their signs. Did you see that one? This one just says, "Shut the F up." I thought silence was violence. You want me to be violent? Eradicate transphobia. Here's a couple more trans flags and signs. Respect existence or expect resistance. A little trans flag there. Looks like trans is possibly replacing race, replacing Black people as the number one most powerful oppressed group on the changing stock market of the hierarchy of oppression. It looks like trans is sort of like been creeping on up there is up at the top now. Trans people are people. When you see a sign like that says trans people are people, that's so dishonest. Whoever wrote that, it's so dishonest, because what it's doing is it's a straw man in sign form. It's putting words in the opposition's mouth. He's basically saying, I think trans people are people, unlike all of you, who don't. It's ridiculous. I don't know anybody who thinks trans people are not people. Now you can see inside, they're trying to listen to the speaker who they've brought, and they've got this circus, this childish toddler tantrum circus happening outside, trying to disrupt it. This reminds me of when I spoke at the Women Leaving the Left event with Megan Murphy and Mary Lou Singleton and Michelle Evans, Isabella Malbin. Anyway, we had rented out a room at the Austin Public Library, and these ideologically possessed zombies showed up and protested like this outside. And they actually got up on the windows. There's a video of it here on Deprogrammed on my channel if you want to see it. They banged on the windows throughout the whole event, trying to make it hard for people, especially people in the back, to hear. It's not just that they don't want to come and hear whatever it is you have to say. It's that they don't want anyone else to be able to either. That's the sign of an authoritarian. That's the sign of someone who wants to control other people. That's what cancel culture is. It's perfectly fine. It's one thing to say, I'm going to vote with my dollars. I'm going to vote with my feet. And I'm not going to go to hear this lecture or buy this book or go to this movie. I'm not going to support that. That's one thing. Perfectly fine. What the authoritarians on the left like to do is, and this is what gets called cancel culture a lot, or it's part of cancel culture. It's not enough for them to say, I'm not going to support that. I'm not going to go to that lecture. I'm not going to buy that book. I'm not going to go to that movie. They add on to that, and you won't either. Like they're very much like, and we will make sure you can't do that either. You can't go to that lecture. You can't go to that movie or buy that book. That's authoritarianism. That's why these people are like the NAZI. Okay, we're going to stop. There's a lot more footage of this. I just wanted to talk about ideological possession, because that's what I think of when I see this. And Jordan Peterson was the first person I ever heard use that phrase. And it just hit me, like a ton of bricks. Like, yes, it is like possession in many ways. It's a good analogy. A lot of these people, they have dead eyes. They don't seem to be animated by their own ability to reason and to form opinions. They seem to be animated a lot by emotion and animosity that they can't really explain. I'm going to show you just the beginning of a lecture by Jordan Peterson. We're just going to watch like a minute or two of this one. And this is where he's talking about ideological possession. I don't know if this is the same one that I saw originally, but this is going to be good. What it means to be ideologically possessed.
Now, I want to show you some things. I haven't done this before, but we'll see how it goes. I'm going to show you something that happened recently. Some of you may be aware of this and some of you not. So this is a video about, there was a town meeting that a number of people spoke at, including one shopkeeper from New York. And after the meeting, he was interviewed by the press, the TV, and one of the attendees at the meeting was upset about the fact that the press was concentrating on him instead of concentrating on what she regarded as the issues at hand. So I'm going to play this for you to begin with. Now, what I'm trying to show you, I want to show you what it means for someone to be ideologically possessed. And so you can tell when you're talking to someone like that, because this is something I learned from reading Solzhenitsyn, is because you can predict absolutely everything they're going to say.
That's one of the most important parts right there. You know how we just walked through that hallway scene from Purdue University last night, and it's like, I already know what this girl would say. If I were to go to her and say, hey, explain your sign, why does conservatism need to be eradicated? I already know what she's likely going to say. Like, they operate off of a script. They're not actually thinking. When I left social justice ideology, it took me a while to realize, like, you engage in something that at the time when you're in it, when you're in a cult, you think of it as thinking. It's like thinking, but it's not thinking. And the best way I can describe it is whenever you would be in a conversation with someone, especially if they were disagreeing with you or challenging you in some way, you would be sorting through a filing cabinet. I would be sorting through a filing cabinet in my brain of all of the approved slogans and words and phrases and gotchas. That's not thinking. And if for some reason, maybe you're one of these students at Purdue and somebody sent you this, maybe your parents or your family members or friends think that you're woke and they sent you this, I would ask you, when's the last time you had a conversation with someone who, especially someone who disagrees with you, where you were not sorting through that filing cabinet thinking of all the approved things or the gotchas that you could say? All the gotchas, like stay in your lane, check your privilege. When have you last sat down with someone you disagree with and just been vulnerable and open and humble and treated them the way you would like to be treated? Okay, we're going to continue.
Once you know the algorithmic substructure of their political ideology, which is usually predicated on about 5 or 6 axioms, you can use the axioms to automatically generate speech content. You don't even have to hear the person, you can just predict what they're going to say. And so that alleviates any responsibility whatsoever they have for thinking. And it also allows them to believe that they have full control and full knowledge over not only full control and full knowledge about the entire world, but also the capacity to distinguish without a moment's thought between those who are on the side of the good and those who are not. And that's where the danger really comes. So anyways.
Yes, that's another great point. He says it allows them to distinguish really quick, like who's the good guy and who's the bad guy. The way that the ideologically possessed, and the woke being one of them, the way that they view the world is so childlike. It's so black and white. And they're basically like, you're with us or against us. If you read the Antifa handbook, it says, if you're not a Marxist, then you're a fascist. And either or. No, that's crap. That's BS. If you're a young person listening to this, that's crap. There's more than two. You don't have to be a Marxist or a fascist. And I would argue that Marxists and fascists are very similar anyway. But they're very quick to put everyone, all those kids in that hallway, like he just said, they're very quick to put everyone in that good or bad box. If you have a MAGA hat, a red MAGA hat, oh, they put you in the bad box immediately. Even if you're one of their sacred groups, oppressed groups that they like to speak on behalf of. Even if you're a Black person or a woman or a gay person or a trans person in a MAGA hat, they will still put you in the bad person box. Because at the end of the day, it's not about any of the identity group stuff that they foist out there and that they're using to push the ideology. Underneath all the identity group stuff, which we talked about in the previous video, what is woke? Underneath all that, it's really just about the ideology itself. They will abandon all of that identity group stuff if you don't speak the ideology. But they're very quick to put you in that box of like bad guy, good guy. That's why I said, if you are woke, if someone sent you this video and you're watching this, I genuinely ask you, like, when have you talked with someone recently who you disagree with? Because my guess is that if you're deep into the cult, I do call it a cult. I was in it. I think I should be able to call it what I want. I was in it for 20 years. If you're deep in the cult, the longer you're in it, it really encourages you to see anyone who's not in the cult as a bad guy and someone that you shouldn't talk to. even if they're family and friends. And so it's cult-like in that way because it gets you to cut off contact with and engagement with and conversation with people who disagree with you. And one of the things that Jordan Peterson here has talked about a lot, which really stood out to me when I was leaving this cult, was the fact that in a good conversation, I heard him say once, if you have a good conversation, and they're very few and far between, by the way, but in a good conversation, you're going to have this back and forth, which challenges your ideas, and you're going to come away with either your ideas being strengthened or changed a little bit or discarded, because you're having a real and a genuine and a rare conversation where someone's challenging you to either make your ideas better or to change them and modify them, which makes them better, possibly, or to get rid of them because you find out you don't agree with your ideas anymore. That's a real conversation. And when you're in a cult, you don't have conversations like that. You speak approved words. It's really empty. It's really performative.
We'll take a look at this.
So right now, the news is interviewing a person whose daughter was a heroin addict, I think, is what he said in his public comment. And he's pro-bunker, he's pro-cops. And so he's the one getting interviewed, and there are like a million people who have spoken about how they've been abused by the cops, that they're not being spoken to. Only the person who's pro-bunker, who's also a person of color. So they got their token, and that's the one that they're using. And I have no idea, we'll find out.
I have a question.
I'm going to skip ahead because I just want to get to the part where Peterson's talking about.
It's humongous.
Okay. Humongous what? Humongous what?
Humongous.
Humongous what?
Humongous.
I'm going to stop. This is silly. I don't know if this guy includes the rest. Oh, yeah, he does. He gets back to it. Okay. So I'm going to get back to this part of the lecture about the ideologically possessed.
To help her out and get her to spread her message. So, okay, so that was interesting. And then what happened was this guy here decided that he was going to start a funding campaign for Humongous. And so he started a funding campaign on a website devoted to funding such projects, and they shut him down. So then he started another funding campaign, and he raised $140,000. And so this is his interview with Humongous.
Let me turn up my mic, Rudy.
We're not going to watch all this. I apologize. This is a great and interesting video. If you want to watch this clip of a lecture of Jordan Peterson's, it's called What It Means to Be Ideologically Possessed by Jordan Peterson. And he's using this example of the woman who was protesting against Humongous as the example. But I think a better example is what we just watched, which is these students in the hallway protesting and screaming like we've seen happen many times in the past 6-7 years. Yeah, I almost think that there should be repercussions for you. Not that you shouldn't be allowed to engage in free speech and protest. I absolutely think you should be able to as a student. But if you are disrupting the lecture, like these kids appear to be, if you're making it so other students cannot attend or cannot hear, if they're sitting in the room and they can't hear, I think you should be reprimanded. There should be some type of punishment from your university, because that's not you simply choosing not to go. That's not you simply choosing to protest. That's you trying to prevent other people from being able to hear it. And they shouldn't allow it. So let's see. I haven't looked at the chat in a second. If you guys have any questions, let me know. I have one other topic I wanted to cover other than ideological possession. Oh, hey, Pirate. Hail, I'm lurking and working. And you made a rhyme this time. Thanks for being here. Lindsay, the cynical geek, says Mao and Pol Pot are beaming from the fiery pits of hell at these protesters. Yes, they are. These kind of scenes, they disgust me. But I'm so used to them. It's like when I was at the Austin Library and that was happening to us, I'm so used to them. I can walk out amongst them and, try and talk to them. They when I went out, my body was having a natural physiological response to people screaming at you, like standing this close to you, and my hands were shaking, and they started making fun of me about your hands are shaking, and it was like, and I was just like, well, yeah, my heart rate is increased. I'm standing out here with people yelling in my face. But other than that, I'm not that worried by these people. I guess maybe just because I've seen a lot of it in the past few years. I'm more worried for them. I guess I'm worried for society when this is what's happening at universities. So there's one other thing I wanted to put on the screen. This is a quote that I think I heard from Jordan Peterson around the same time I heard him use the phrase ideological possession. And this is a Carl Jung quote. It's people don't have ideas. Ideas have people. And I thought about that for a long time. And I don't know if it's always true. I think it's one of those things, if you think about it for a long time, and if you're in the chat, you might be able to disagree or give me your opinion on why that's wrong. And, you can think of some examples where that's wrong. But I think if you were to replace the word ideas with ideology, then absolutely, I agree 100% of the time. People don't have ideology. Ideology has people. I think I agree with that 100% of the time. Meaning, a lot of times people are possessed by their ideas. Their ideology is what animates them. It's what has control over them, like those kids in that clip at Purdue. They're not consciously thinking about anything that they're out there saying or doing. Their ideology, they're in the grips of their ideology. It's like The Madness of Crowds, the Douglas Murray book. It's mob rule. It's like the Salem witch trials. Okay, I'm going to get rid of that. There is one other thing I wanted to talk about today, just to switch gears. This is, it's a little bit similar to ideological possession. It could be considered to be similar. I don't know if you guys follow on Twitter Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. He's one of the doctors who was routinely censored in the past 3 years because he disagreed with the narrative, the COVID narrative, and with some of the prescribed government, solutions. And he is back on Twitter, and he put this out today, and it's really interesting. This is so interesting. Do you guys know? Remember all the people who were saying, you're going to kill grandma, you're a grandma killer, like the really hateful people, the really emotionally manipulative, the ones who used emotional blackmail, who behaved like psychopaths, sociopaths, and narcissists. That's what emotional blackmail is. Anyone can use it. But if you use it, I would say you're using a tactic of people with personality disorders. That's what they do naturally. And so during the COVID years, a lot of people were using these narcissistic, sociopathic tactics of like, if you don't wear a mask, you want to kill grandma. If you don't get the jab, you want to kill grandma. If you go out shopping, if you go to your job, if you leave the house, you want to kill grandma. That's emotional blackmail. That's an abuser tactic. So all those people that were doing that, I think about them from time to time because I know that some of them are still out there. They're proud of it and they're still saying stuff like that. But I bet a lot of them have sort of tried to, like that meme of Homer Simpson like sliding into the bushes. I think a lot of them have tried to like recede, like that wasn't me. Like I think some of them are probably embarrassed of being that way. And they try to like, maybe nobody will remember who was who during the past few years, right? And I thought of those people today when I read this, because it looks like some kind of leak from the UK government And Dr. Jay Bhattacharya has shared it, and he says, in March of 2020, the UK scientific body advising the government came up with 25 ways to make the public treat others like biohazards. Among the tactics considered included. Now, by the way, this is social engineering that we're talking about here. This is social engineering. This is coercion and propaganda. This is a scientific body advising a government on how to psychologically manipulate and control the population, control people, and get people to treat one another like shit, to treat one another like biohazards. And a lot of this worked on a lot of people. I think those of you who watch, most of you who are regulars who watch this program, you probably already know this. None of this is news. Like a lot of the COVID stuff that comes out, we're like, yeah, we've known this forever. But all you people who were in the COVIDian cult and who only listen to mainstream, approved sources and who didn't follow and see what was actually going on and who was being censored and what information wasn't getting out there, those of you who are not skeptical, this is probably news to you. That if you were one of those people who was running around falling for all of it and shaming your friends and family and saying emotionally manipulative things like you must want to kill grandma if you disagree with me, you guys were guinea pigs and you fell for it. You were easy marks. You're the guy that comes into the carnival and everyone's like, get that guy in my booth. I know I'm going to shake him down. You are the person who is easy to shake down and manipulate and control. I mean, you are. You got conned. So here's some of the stuff they put in this. This is what the UK scientific body, again, in March of 2020, advised the government that they could do to psychologically manipulate people and get them to treat others like crap. Number one, making people think they are more at risk than they actually are. There you go. Number one. We're gonna look at the source material in a second too. I just want to read through his summary. Number two, emotional messaging. Wow, wonder why. Here's the thing I've talked about before. There's a great book by Jonathan Haidt called The Righteous Mind. Why good people are divided by politics and religion. And in that book, he talks a lot about the difference between your emotional brain and your rational brain. And he argues, just to put it simply, that most of us make decisions based on our emotional brain. And then we rationalize backwards to try and justify and rationalize whatever it is emotionally we've already decided. And I think he gives examples in there of, like think about a fight with your spouse even, or something that a daily thing that might happen, like an argument with someone at a gas station. I don't know, just any kind of conflict that might be in your daily life that has nothing to do with politics. You will sometimes make that initial gut reaction is an emotional decision, and then you try and justify it. And you have to really stop yourself from doing that if you're an honest and sincere person, because your emotions will lead you way astray. They can lead you astray. So anyway, emotional messaging, because they know that emotions are the best way to psychologically manipulate people. Don't give them a bunch of facts. Play with their emotions. Lean on their emotions. Weaponized empathy. Quote, a responsibility to others. How many times do we hear that messaging? They definitely got that out there. Confident assertions that MPIs will protect hospitals. Positive messaging around actions. Coercive legislation. They put that right in here. Hey, government, you should do coercive legislation. You should coerce the people who elected you to represent them. You should coerce the people who elected you to represent them. Crazy, right? Shaming. Social disapproval. Again, this is the UK scientific body advising the government in March of 2020 on ways to psychologically manipulate the population and get people to treat each other like crap. And then he includes a couple screenshots. Here's the matrix of options that they considered. I'm going to look through this real quick, see if I missed anything from you guys before I get too far away. Okay. Good. Okay. Here's the list of options they considered. And then at the top, you can see evaluation criteria, acceptability, practicability, effectiveness, affordability, spillover effects, are they positive or negative, and equity. And then this nice little acronym up here spells out appease. And so then you've got the options here on the left. And so they've got let's look at some of the more nefarious. Well, actually, let's look at some of the more innocuous ones. Tailor messaging. Okay, they want to tailor the messaging. Provide clear, precise, credible guidance about specific behaviors. Okay, look at number 2. Here's a very nefarious, nasty one. Hey, government, you should use the media to increase the sense of personal threat. Acceptability, high. Practicability, high. Effectiveness, high if accompanied by other options. Affordability, high. Spillover effects, could be negative. I think they're talking about us, guys. Could be negative. Some people could see what we're doing. Here we go. Number 3, another nefarious one. Use the media to increase the sense of responsibility to others. Use the media, number 4, to promote positive messaging around actions. Tailor messaging. Okay, number 6. This is about social approval and shaming and stuff. Number 6. The government should use and promote social approval for desired behaviors. Number 7, they said the government should consider enacting legislation to compel, to force required behaviors, which a lot of the governments ended up doing. Stepping all over our individual rights, forcing you to stay at home, forcing you to put on a mask to go outside, forcing you to get a shot or not be able to travel, or this is all authoritarian. Number 8, they said the government should consider use of social disapproval for failure to comply. And they certainly tried to do that, didn't they? You can't eat at this restaurant if you don't get the jab. You can't travel if you don't get the jab. You're going to lose your job if you don't get the jab. Yeah, we know this shot hasn't been out long enough for there to be any longitudinal studies. So you have really no information to look at yet to decide if you want to take it or not. And it's completely reasonable that you may not want to take that or put it into your child. But we're going to use society to shame you, and we're going to try and create laws to coerce you, and we're going to put pressure on your employer to fire you if you don't take this thing. Even if you have a medical exemption and a doctor who tells you, do not take it. And I know some people who were in that situation. I got to interview a friend whose husband had a clotting disorder and was told by his doctor, under no circumstances should you take this shot. And he was still facing questions at work about whether he'd get to keep his job or continue to travel. Let's see, number 9 and 10, the government was also told they should develop and mobilize adequate resources, community infrastructure. They should provide financial material resources to mitigate effects of measures on equity. What's the equity there? Okay, so then another thing Dr. Jay Bhattacharya says, they even briefly, now this is in a document. The UK scientific community put together where they were advising the government in the UK in March of 2020 on what they should do to help manipulate the population so that we would treat each other like biohazards, to psychologically mess with people and control them. And he says they briefly considered options for focused protection of vulnerable people, but in the end, they didn't. They didn't do anything to protect the vulnerable. He says, here was their plan for that. And then he's got a couple of things here, like a 4-point plan for clearly tailored guidance to make clear who needs to do what, expand the guidance to include vulnerable adults and employers, provide community support, targeted media campaigns and apps and websites to help people follow the guidance. And then Dr. J. Bhattacharya says, if scientists advising the UK government respected fellow citizens, they would have categorically ruled out options to mislead, coerce, and shame the public. They would have put more effort into options to protect the vulnerable people, but they did not. Most US scientists were no better. So you can read this whole report. I'm going to put the link in the chat right now, and I'll put it in the video description. It's only 8 pages. Actually, you know what? Let's read part of this now, because I know he summarized it, but there's another. Oh, this just burns my biscuits. We're going to pull this up. There's this whole section on coercion, which is just, oh my gosh. The government. Okay. Can you guys see this? There you go. And we'll try to make it a little bit bigger if you're reading along with me. Options for increasing adherence to social distancing measures. And so I just want to scroll down to, let's look at persuasion, number 2. Perceived threat. A substantial number of people still do not feel sufficiently personally threatened. They don't feel sufficiently threatened. Who decides? You know what? Keri looks like she feels a little bit threatened, but not sufficiently. Like, she needs to be more threatened. Come on, government. Let's crank the right wheels to make sure Keri feels sufficiently threatened. A substantial number of people still do not feel sufficiently personally threatened. It could be that they are reassured by the low death rate in their demographic group. Yeah, maybe it could be that people were looking at the data and they were like, it looks like it affects mostly the elderly and those with comorbidities, like the vulnerable people. Okay. It could be they are reassured by the low death rate in their demographic group, although levels of concern may be rising. Having a good understanding of the risk has been found to be positively associated with adoption of the COVID-19 social distancing measures in Hong Kong. The perceived level of personal threat needs to be increased among those who are complacent, using hard-hitting emotional messaging. To be effective, this must also empower people by making clear the actions they can take to reduce the threat. Hard-hitting emotional messaging. This is the origin of all of that. Like, hey, Keri, if you don't wear a mask, which I didn't, you're a grandma killer. You just want to kill grandma. This is where all of that dishonest emotional blackmail came from. I mean, the same place. It came from this place. Responsibility to others. There seems to be insufficient understanding of or feelings of responsibility about and people's role in transmitting the infection to others. This may have resulted in part from messaging around the low level of risk to most people and talk of the desirability of building herd immunity. Yeah, they really didn't like talking about herd immunity back then. And a lot of the doctors and scientists and experts who were talking about it got banned. Here in all bold, messaging needs to emphasize and explain the duty to protect others. Okay, then I want to scroll down to incentivization. Social approval. Social approval can be a powerful source of reward. Yeah. Not only can this be provided directly by highlighting examples of good practice and providing strong social encouragement and approval in communications, but members of the community can be encouraged to provide it to each other. this can still have a beneficial spillover effect of promoting social cohesion. Communication strategies should provide social approval for desired behaviors and promote social approval within the community. Now, they're pushing social approval like, you're a good person if you get this shot or wear this mask or what have you. And the flip side is true. And we're going to see, and we're going to scroll down a second and see social disapproval. They also encourage that, which is you are scum of the earth, bad person who wants to kill grandma because you chose not to take this experimental shot. And so we're not going to let you eat at this restaurant or get on a plane or, oh my goodness, go to the post office or any number of things. We're not going to let you go to work. So here we go. Coercion. Number 7, compulsion. Again, if you're just tuning in, this is a document that was put together by the UK scientific community that was given to the government, the UK government, advising them on how they could better manipulate the population to get the population to comply with their COVID guidelines and to treat one another like we were biohazards. We're under the section called coercion. Number 7, compulsion. Experience with UK enforcement legislation, such as compulsory seatbelt use, suggests that with adequate preparation, rapid change can be achieved. Some other countries have introduced mandatory self-isolation on a wide scale without evidence of major public unrest, and a large majority of the UK's population appear to be supportive of more coercive measures. For example, 64% of adults in Great Britain said they would support putting London under a lockdown. However, data from Italy and South Korea suggests that for aggressive protective measures to be effective, special attention should be devoted to those population groups that are more at risk. In addition, communities need to be engaged to minimize risk of negative effects. This is in all bold. And by the way, let's get back up there for a second. It says in these countries, Italy and South Korea, it suggests that for these aggressive protective measures like lockdowns to be effective, that special attention needs to be devoted to the at-risk populations, the vulnerable populations. And as we know, they did not focus on protecting the vulnerable populations. They, instead of saying, let's enact these measures to protect the groups that we know that are vulnerable, like those with comorbidities, those in nursing homes, the elderly. No, instead it was like, everyone is locked down. Everyone wears the mask. They focused it on the public at large. Look at the part in bold. Consideration should be given to enacting legislation with community involvement to compel key social distancing measures. So to force people. And then we've got this social disapproval section. Social disapproval from one's community can play an important role in preventing antisocial behavior. Oh, what's antisocial behavior? Because what they're saying, antisocial behavior is a person choosing not to go along with the government coercion or the guidelines because they've actually read the data and studies and they believe in making decisions for themselves and their own body and their kids' bodies in terms of what new medicine they're going to take, what new shot. That's antisocial. I think it's antisocial. I think it's antisocial behavior to engage in emotional blackmail, to lie and to be dishonest and to emotionally threaten people and say that they're grandma killers if they don't get on board with your dystopian authoritarian government plan for how to control people. That's antisocial behavior. These are sociopaths who are engaging in DARVO, deny and reverse victim offender. This is sociopathic behavior. And one of the things they're doing is saying, hey, those guys over there, the ones who don't comply, the ones who need to be, what was it up at the top? The ones who need to have their personal threat level increased, the ones who are complacent, those are the antisocial ones. That's what they're saying. That's what they're doing. That's what those with antisocial personality disorders do. They accuse their targets of the very thing they're doing. I think it's so funny they put antisocial behavior in there because that's what they are. That's what this is. How can we manipulate people? That's what this document is. How can we manipulate, coerce, and oppress the population and call them antisocial while we do it? Consideration should be given to use of social disapproval, but with a strong caveat around unwanted negative consequences. One of the unwanted negative consequences is going to be, probably they were thinking, what about when all this stuff comes out of what we did? I'm going to stop sharing that now. I'm going to put the link in the chat. I'm going to also put it in the description of today's video, so you can go read the whole thing. You can send it to people if you want. Let me see if I missed anything from you guys. Ken Johnston, there aren't any English people left in London. I don't know what conversation I was missing out on, but that's a funny quote. Oh, I get you. People who've been English for generations, maybe. British. Okay, I think, and if I missed anything that I should have read or seen, just let me know, because I wasn't reading the chat while I was reading that. Those are the two things I wanted to talk about today. And again, when I do these, sort of the ones by myself especially, I'm trying to talk a little bit more, at least on the first part of this one, the part about ideological possession. I'm trying to talk a little bit more to people who might still be in the woke cult. So if you have friends or family who are, and you want to send this video to them, I encourage you to do so. They might get upset with you at first, but hopefully they'll listen and stick around and see that we're not all crazy, whatever it is they think we are. So consider sending it to them. April 15th, like I mentioned, I'm going to be hosting Minds Fest here in Austin at the Vulcan Theater, and there's a whole host of speakers, debate, music, comedy. You can get info at minds.com. I know Luke Radowski and Ian Crossland from Timcast are going to be there. Daryl Davis, Jack Posobiec, Peter Boghossian, Destiny, a whole host of people. Jamie Kilstein, I know, is one of the comedians performing. And anyway, I hope to see you there April 15th if you're in town. One thing, just for the regulars or semi-regulars who've been here with me for a while, I think we just passed, this month is like the 1-year anniversary of Deprogrammed. And my husband had to remind me. And I'm so excited. I'm so grateful to those of you who are here, who are regulars, who show up, who help promote the show. And I think what we're going to do next week is have a big 1-year anniversary party show where we invite a bunch of people, a bunch of guests that we've had on Deprogram in the past year, and people that I had on my previous podcast as well. So we'll see who drops in and shows up. We're likely doing it Wednesday night, the 29th. Just a heads up. Hope to have a whole list of people who are coming to hang out. We'll let you know. And that's coming up soon. ADL 1992. How do you talk to people who you disagree with? This is a great question. At the end, to have a great question like this, I'm going to take a second and answer it. You talk to them in the same way you would want them to talk to you. So, for example, if you're talking to someone who's woke and you're not woke, and they're, you can tell they kind of just repeat those same phrases over and over. Think about this. They probably think you're evil, or at least that your, whatever your beliefs are evil. And you might think they're evil, or you might think their beliefs are evil. And so in the same way that you would want them to hear you out, because in your opinion, they have the wrong idea of you. They have the wrong idea of you and your beliefs. If they would just listen to you and hear you out, they might realize that, right? So you have to treat them the same way. You have to give them that benefit of the doubt that you could be wrong about them. When I talk to a woke person, I don't mean that I actually think like I've thought about woke long enough. I've done the work, to borrow their expression, that I know what I think of it. And when I talk with someone who I can tell is maybe a shallow kind of surface level new convert to woke and that kind of stuff. I already know what I think about woke, and it's very unlikely they're going to change my mind, but I don't treat them as if it's a worthless endeavor. Does that make sense? I will go into the conversation in good faith, hoping that they'll show me good faith in return. And if they do, then wow, something magic could happen. You could go back and forth. And maybe this is exciting. You might be the first person they've ever talked to who they disagree with so much, who's also very friendly and open to them while you're talking. There's so much that goes into your body language and the way that you present yourself when you're talking to someone. If I'm talking to a woke person and they're saying some crazy woke stuff to me, but they're a friend or they're a friend of my husband's or a friend of a friend or something, unless they are being rude or hateful, I don't treat them with contempt. I treat them with openness in my body language as well. So that means things like, don't have your arms crossed while they're telling you this stuff. Don't have your head like, you don't do that kind of stuff, because that's on a deep level internally. Your gut reacts to that and is like, that person is closed off to what I'm saying. I'm actually the opposite. I'm usually pretty open with my body language and my face and my eyes and my voice to make sure, like, non-threatening, right? Like, I'm not here to, and so that's how I would start. I hope this makes sense. And then you just play it by ear based on where you go from there. I will use humor sometimes. I will laugh at things sometimes. It just depends on the person and the conversation and the context. I will laugh at things sometimes if I think maybe they've never heard someone laugh at that idea before and they need to hear someone laugh at it. like when someone told me that we shouldn't say master bedroom. The way in which this person said it, I could tell that they weren't even convinced themselves. They were kind of seeing what we thought about that, even though they were in the kind of the woke space. And they were like, yeah, you're not supposed to say master bedroom anymore. I was told, because of slavery, we're supposed to say owner's bedroom. And I felt like it would be good for, in the spur of the moment, like it'd be good for that person to hear me laugh at that. So I was just like, oh, that's so silly. I don't worry about that. Right. You can choose to use humor too, but in that moment, it was like, I think, at least I hope it was obvious, I wasn't laughing at that person. I was laughing at what they had been told. So they knew I thought it was silly. And maybe if there's a little part of them that was questioning it and thinking it's silly, they're like, okay, yeah, she's laughing at that. So that, I hope that's not a very long answer, but that's a short version of how to do it. Treat them, I know it sounds so cliche, but it's the truth. Treat them the way that you want to be treated and show them good faith. And sometimes you show them good faith even when they're not showing it. It just depends. And other times, like if it's a stranger and it's not a friend of the family or a friend of a friend, if it's just some person out in the world who's being a jerk and they're not showing good faith. If it's a person on Twitter, for example, if you're not showing, I'm not going to continue showing it to you usually. But in person, it's a little different, we'll continue to extend that beyond the point at which it is deserved, if that makes sense. Okay. Somebody says, master bedroom doesn't even come from slavery, LOL. Yeah, they don't care. ADL says, it's harder when you're autistic. Oh, I'm sure it is. Yeah, it depends. I mean, no, there's autism presents in a whole manner of different ways, but I do know that some of the ways in which it presents, people have a harder time with reading the body language and stuff we talked about. If you do struggle with that, I would just say there are some very simple things you can do to remember. One of them is closed body is closed off and open body is open. And that's a pretty simple one to catch yourself doing if it's not something that comes naturally to you. So if you are listening to someone say things you disagree with, you may unconsciously cross your arms or cross your legs or become more closed down, or your face may come in closer because you don't agree with it. And If you want to practice not doing that, so you stay open, just remember open body. Keep your, don't cross your arms. Don't draw your face in. Try and keep your face open. That's an easy one to try and do, I think. Midwest Finest for $4.99. Thank you so much. Says, I wasn't plugged in when I took the vax, although all the drama would go away. It becomes more depressing. I should have waited it out a bit longer. Oh, I am so sorry to hear that. But you know what? I am glad I did not take it. However, I don't necessarily think I'm not one of those people who thinks like, if you took it, you're doomed in some way. I don't necessarily think that either. I just think at the time when I was trying to explain it to I did have some people in my life who didn't understand, and basically the way I was trying to explain it to them is, we do know what some of the risks of COVID are, the complications that come with COVID, or we're starting to hear what some of them are. And it sounds like there are some very similar ones, that risks and stuff that come with the vax. Why would in my mind, it was like giving myself all those why it would be like, yeah, give me COVID. It just is like, why would I do that? I'm probably going to catch it, but I'd rather just wait and catch it and roll the dice than like take this thing, in which there's no evidence it's going to help me at all, and may actually hurt me in the same way that the virus would, or maybe even worse ways. So it's an unknown. So why would I do that? Why would I put that in my body? That's the reason I didn't take it. All that being said, I don't necessarily think that, just like with COVID, man, this virus was crazy. It wreaked havoc on people in so many different ways that I've heard of. This video will probably get banned just for talking about this, but anecdotally, I'm sure you all have friends who've talked about, I think the virus and the jab both did some wonky things. I know some people who, and I'm not separating these out, I'm saying the virus and the jab both did some wonky things. I know people who had their Epstein-Barr virus come back, people who experienced mono again, people who lost the ability to sing, people who lost like their singing voice, like it affected their voice. And these are people who sang for a living. People who it affected, for women, it affected their periods, the menstruation, rashes, in some people, hair loss, like all kinds of things. And again, I'm talking about the virus and the jab. So whatever, I'm rambling now. You can't say these things on YouTube. This video is going to probably be yoinked. Strokes and heart attacks are way up. Yes, blood clots, things like that. Sense of smell and taste, absolutely. The way in which I heard COVID described once was that I thought was a really accurate way of describing it, was that it was a vascular disease that affected, all of the blood vessels. And basically, if you think of your vascular system of the human body, like like all the roads in the city, all of the conduits, everything that you use to get from different parts of the city to other parts. If you think of it like the concrete, like the streets and the roads, it's like COVID was like coming in and just smashing all of that up. Like the very things that you use, that your body uses, that connect all of the different systems. I don't know. I thought that was a good analogy. Andrew Joyner for £5. Thank you, sir. Says, I asked my sister and woke nieces if it was actually a compliment being called woke. Yeah, that didn't go well. LOL. I wonder what they said. And then Surly Unicorn says, my thinking face, which strongly resembles a scowl, has kind of been permanently etched on my aged features. Resting bastard face makes people not want to approach. LOL. There are contexts in which I bet you could even think of in which it's good to have that kind of face. So no worries. Okay. You guys, it's been fun hanging out, talking about the stuff we're not supposed to talk about today. Pirate, I lost it, but I saw your quote asking for a pay raise. We'll talk about it, sir. I should have mentioned, if you want to support the show, you can do so. We have a Patreon, a Locals, a Subscribe Star, and you could also become a YouTube member, even $1 a month helps us out. We want to do more comedy videos. We have our first one out. It's called Woke Therapy. Please go check it out. We have others in the works, and want to continue to do interviews with people about culture and woke ideology and faith, and we want to continue to have fun on Wednesday nights. So thank you guys so much for supporting, and I'll see you on Monday. Have a happy weekend. Okay, cool. Bye.